Let's start off with a story, though, because I like stories. When I was younger, and I apologize if I've said this before. Some of you, my wife for sure has heard this story before, but when I was younger, my family went to the state fair, and I was on the shorter side of things at that point. I think I was probably around 6 years old, 7 years old, something like that. And I really liked to go on the rides, though. But the problem was I was not tall enough to go on most of them. So I had this plan in place. I knew I'd been there the year before. I was like, I wasn't tall enough last year, but this year, maybe. And I wore a hat. So this year, when I went, I was like, just adjust my hat up a little bit and make sure that I'm on like my tippy toes and I can reach to the high enough mark tall enough mark to ride the rides. This particular ride that I convinced my parents was a good idea for me to go on, it was called Super Loop. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It is just one circle. That's all it does. And it just goes back and forth until finally you go upside down. It pauses for a little while, and then the full loop it. It's pretty fun. I was not tall enough for that ride. And I hopped on, and my sister was next to me. And pretty quickly we realized that my seatbelt was also not tight enough. And it was stuck. So I had it seemed like about 18 inches worth of slack in my seatbelt. So every time we went upside down, I just went, fell into my seatbelt, and that was the only thing holding me back. And my sister's arm was like the other seatbelt across me. And I real quickly went from having a good time to, I might die today. This was a horrible decision. This was not right. This is why they have the height limits on things like that. I was so grateful. I don't know if there's ever been a moment that I've been more grateful for my sister in my life, because I kept my life. She was literally holding me in my seat the whole time. All of us have said things like this from time to time in our life. Or maybe not all of us, but most of us probably have. I'm so glad that he showed up in my life when he did. I'm not sure what I would have made it through this without her. I wouldn't be where I am today apart from them. We have people in our life that we look back on when we actually have some time and space to look back with the perspective of, where would I be today without that person? I might not be alive without my sister, but there's other people that have had incredible impact in your life. I can think of, seasonally, like every single season of my life, there's been someone that has actually helped me grow and move forward in the direction. Maybe it was my parents, maybe it was my family, my sisters, maybe it was, I had a youth leader that just in a very short season of time had an incredible impact on my life. My dad and my grandpa have been incredible father figures to me. That was one of the hardest seasons that I had to walk through when I lost my grandpa. I only had one grandpa. And when I was growing up, kids would tell me, is that too bad for you that you only have one grandpa? Is that sad? And I was like, that's a weird, mean thing to say. But they're kids. And I would say, no, because my grandpa's twice the grandpa that you have. So, and it was true. My grandpa's amazing man, but he impacted me to such a great degree. I am absolutely a different person today because of the impact that he's had on my life. Obviously, I got to, include, I knew I was getting into a good thing when I married my wife. I didn't realize how good of a thing, though, when I started to actually be around her parents. They have been incredible influences on me as well. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. God's like, hey, I have someone special for you, and there's bonus gifts too. They're incredible people. And of course, my wife. I mean, my goodness, talk about someone that has absolutely helped me go further in my life and become a better person. I hope that we all think that of our spouse. That's hopefully a good thing, that you're like, man, she really helps me out, rather than, man, I wish I was. We're not going to go down the road. But this is when people meet Amy and I, when they know us, this is what they say. We're sure that you wouldn't be where you are without her. It's like, no, that's what we know. We know that she's had a great impact on you. But when we think back, we look back, we filter through all those people that have had impact on us. This is the list of things that we describe them as the impact that they've had, that they've given us insight, that they've given us encouragement right in the exact moment that we needed encouragement. Maybe they gave us some perspective. that was challenging. And perspective is it's a nice word, but other times it can be really, really hard to hear other people's perspectives. And maybe that's what someone gave you. And in the moment, it didn't feel like a gift, but hindsight, the perspective change and the trajectory change that they caused because of the insight and the perspective they gave you changed who you are. Maybe it was hope. Maybe you didn't have hope, and then you met the person and you're like, oh my goodness, how did I not have hope before? And because of their impact, you have hope today. Here's a question for you. Do they know that you've had that, they've had that impact? Maybe it might be a good idea to thank them. Maybe it might be a good idea to actually tell them that we want to be a community of people here at Canyons Church that communicates, especially when we see truth and value and worth in people's lives and the impact that they've had on us. I don't want to sit up here and be like, oh, congratulations, good job. I want to be up here and actually challenge you to tell those people in your life that have had great impact. Now, like Caleb said, we are in part 4, or maybe Kyle said it, but we're in part 4 of Faithful. This is a series that we've been talking about aspects of life that when you look at different people with very strong faith in moving, growing faith, you start to hear repeated stories as far as aspects of their story. And some of this, this is a 6-week series with 5 faith catalysts that help grow our faith. So we're working through those. Ultimately, this all comes from Jesus. When he started the revolution back, 2,000 years ago, he came and invited people to follow him. He would say, follow me. He would say, follow me. That was the invitation every single time. Come and follow me. And from the very get-go, is like he was asking people that weren't really prepared, weren't ready, weren't, capable necessarily to do the things that he was asking them to do. But over time, they realized that when they follow him physically, when they actually move after him, life starts to change, life starts to shift. And it actually created this extraordinary level of faith that these men had. Eventually, these men had the faith that continued to move this enterprise and change the world to what we have experienced today. Now, the church has done something where, because follow me is pretty intense. That's like you need to drop what you have in your hands and move with me. Believe in me, and this is, Jesus did say believe in me. He did say that as well, but believe in me is like the starting point. In church, over years and generations, we've watered this down from follow me to believe in me. This is like, we now act like this is the finish line. No, all you got to do is just believe. If you can believe, we're good to go. You just deal with life as it comes. But as long as you have the belief, we're good to go. As long as you can shift your mindset and just agree with what we're saying, then you're good. This follow me, though, is a far more consequential decision. Like it's not easy. It's difficult. It's a decision that everything in your life has to shift and has to adjust. Belief that doesn't make a difference isn't the belief that Jesus actually was talking about. Like we talk about belief like just an idea that we agree with, but the belief that Jesus talked about, it required action shift. It required change in the behavior that we have. Inactive belief, it actually weakens our faith. Because we think that we're good, we think that we're doing the right thing, but if we haven't shifted or changed our life and our behavior and our perspective and how we see people and how we deal with relationships and how we engage and interact with finances and every aspect of our life, if that hasn't been affected by our faith, then it's not actually being used. It's just a mental shift that we've made, and that's it. Faith, though, is like a muscle. We have to work it out. We have to practice with it. We have to do things with it in order for our faith to grow stronger. Not just hear something, but actually do something with what we've heard. Now, one of the big questions that we ask around here every once in a while, and especially every single week during this series, is what would I do if I was confident that God was with me? I think this is a question we should ask every single, like if you could just write this on your mirror and ask yourself this question every single morning as you got up, what would I do today with the 24 hours that I have today? What would I do with that if I was confident that God was with me? That question, that answer will actually, it'll change your faith. It'll actually help you grow and move in a direction. So kind of a follow-up question, though, is what fuels or facilitates the development of active, enduring faith? Because as a church, we want to figure out if there's something that we can do to grow our faith, if there's something that we can do to actually help this process happen, then we should probably figure out what those areas are, and we should do whatever we can to implement those in our life. Now, what we've talked about is this is not a to-do list. The 5 faith catalysts, it's not something you can put on a checklist and just make sure you get them all. It's what happens in life and how we respond and how we react, but there's similar circumstances. But the bottom line, the underlying question behind all of this is what creates the go the distance in spite of, can't stop this train kind of faith. The faith that you look around and you see people and you see what life has thrown at them. You're like, I don't think I would survive that, let alone continue with my faith. Like, I don't think that I would be able to continue to do that. And yet these people, it's like their faith actually grows in the face of opposition and faith in the face of circumstances. What are the essential key ingredients for this growth? So that's where we are, kind of get you caught up. 2 weeks ago, we talked about practical teaching. This was the first faith catalyst. It's a mouthful. And this is essentially learning about God with handles for your life. That you experience something, and maybe it's at a church, maybe it's a podcast you listen to, maybe it's you all of a sudden had this moment where someone was teaching about the Bible and ultimately about God, and they gave you handles to carry that with you throughout the day. That it wasn't just about what you could hear, but actually what you would do with what you'd hear. That there's application involved, and the light just kind of turned on. You're like, oh my goodness, I can actually do something with what I've just heard. And in those moments, we see that our faith grows. Then last week we talked about personal ministry. That we obey a nudge even if it's uncomfortable, and we don't feel prepared in order to serve someone else. These are the moments you hear someone talk about going on a mission trip, or you hear someone that had never volunteered or helped out at church before, and they've signed up for kids ministry, and they're like, oh my goodness, I was so overwhelmed. Like, what am I supposed to do with 4th grade girls? Like, I don't know how to do that. And in the moment of their fear and panic of stepping into that classroom, they saw God show up, and they saw lives being changed, and their faith grew in that moment that they stepped out to serve someone else. They found out that God was already there, and God is trustworthy for them. Today, we're shifting a little bit to part 4, but the third faith catalyst, and that is providential relationships. These are the people that, man, it just feels like God dropped people into your life. You look at a season, and you're like, I don't know what that season would have been like, except for God placed them specifically in my life, and it changed who I am. It changed who I've become because of that person. I mean, some of you might even use the language like it was divine intervention. Like God had a plan to actually bring this person and drop them into my life. And one of my favorite, and I could go through, story after story after story. I've done student ministries for a long time of different moments of, weddings that I got to do because one of them invited the other one to go to youth group, and then later on they got married. Like, it's awesome. People that started to show up to church because a kid played golf with another guy, and they're like, hey, you should come to my youth group. And they started hanging out, and his friends started coming to youth group and still comes to church and has a faith that he didn't have before. Some of my favorite stories are, if you can't tell, stories about my wife. I think they're kind of funny too, because she worked at Starbucks for a long time when she was in Bible college, and she couldn't figure out why. It was like, this is awful. I don't know. She didn't say the word hate, but she was not excited to be working at Starbucks for so long. And then you look back on the people that she impacted, and without a doubt, it was like, no, God just needed her not to have a job. God needed her to do a job. Like to create this relationship that would change lives forever. And then she did that with her manager. She did it with a friend. Like, it just happened. And this might be your story too. And we don't often like to think about ourselves like the person that is, I don't know if it's humility or whatever, but we're like, I don't know if I've been that, that person for other people. You're like, I don't know if I'm really that kind of hero, but if you heard their story, they would talk about you that way. If you heard their story, they would talk about you like you wore a cape, like you were a superhero in the moment. And you would tell the story quite differently. You're like, you know what? I'm not a superhero. I just made too many cookies, and I didn't want to eat them all, so I took them to my neighbor. And then that led to a conversation, and I invited him to church, and that's all I did. And they're like, no, but that was something that I needed in that moment, and it changed my life forever because you made too many cookies. Like, it's amazing how God actually uses us. We shouldn't be too surprised about this, though, because this is what God's been doing from the get-go. This is how Christianity got started, that God dropped Jesus into the world to interact and have relationship with people in order to change people forever. This is how God created us. We are wired for relationship. We are specifically geared this way. And some of you are like, I hardly like people. Yeah, but there's one or two that you probably do like. And those relationships are really important too. And then you have all the extroverts that are like, I love everyone. That's me. And we do love everyone. We absolutely do. This in Jesus' ministry, over and over again, anyone that intersected with his life, there was a moment that was had. There was a redefining moment in their life that would forever alter their future. It's this ripple effect too, where it's not just the people that he was immediately in contact with, but, he would impact somebody and they would impact their family and they would impact their friends. And it's like this ripple effect. And that's how God uses us to be able to grow and develop not just our faith, but our faith for other people's faith as well. There's this moment where Jesus, towards the beginning of his ministry, he's inviting some disciples, he's inviting these guys to come and follow him, which is, it's just kind of crazy. Just think about someone showing up, you hear their teaching, you're like, man, that's pretty good. And then they say, hey, can you quit your job and just leave your house and come follow me? Like, we're going to go, I don't know where we're going to go, but we're going to go over here. You just follow me? Like, that's a ridiculous request. But that's what he did, and that's what people ended up doing as well. So one of these moments, Jesus invites Philip to come and follow him. And in Philip at the moment, he's like convinced immediately that Jesus is the Messiah. He's like, this is the one that's been prophesied about. We've heard about this guy for generations and generations. This is him. He's just immediately convinced. You know those friends that you have that you tell them one thing and they're like, oh yeah, 100%. And they immediately believe it. That's Philip in this moment. But he, instead of like just leaving, he says, hold on, Jesus. I don't know if he called him Jesus or like, hold on, master, teacher, whatever. And he like bows as he walks away. But he runs over and grabs his friend, Nathaniel. He's like, Nathaniel, we've found him. We've found the one. We found the Messiah. What do you think Nathaniel's response is in this moment? Remember, if Philip is truly that personality type where he just believes anything immediately, this makes sense that Nathaniel would answer this way. John chapter 1, verse 46. He says, Nazareth, that's where he's from. Can anything good come from there? This is what he says about Jesus. You know where he's from Nazareth. Nothing good can actually come from Nazareth. Now, if this was you and me and we were Philip in this moment, and our friend responded that way, what would our response be? I don't know about you, but my response would be like, okay, good point. Like, I'll just go over here then. Like, I would just leave it, but Philip doesn't. This is amazing what Philip does. He says, well, you come and see for yourself. Come and see, said Philip. And this is incredible because Nathaniel immediately, once he's around Jesus, Jesus tells him, he's like, hey, I saw you under that tree. And Nathaniel's like, I don't understand how you knew about that. Anyway, this whole story. But Nathaniel believes in that moment. He's like, oh my goodness, you told something about me. I now believe also. And I can't help but imagine that as these men continued to follow Jesus throughout the ministry, that there were moments, probably often, that Nathaniel would be standing next to Philip and just like elbow and be like, I can't believe I almost said no to this. Thank you. Thank you for asking me again. Thank you for making sure that I got to be a part of this. I couldn't imagine my life otherwise. I'm so grateful that you asked me to come along with. So this is ultimately, this is providential relationship. This is what this means. You know, the author of Hebrews, we're going to be looking at a little bit in Hebrews, but the author of Hebrews, he was, in the Hebrews is actually less of a letter. It's more of a sermon. And we don't really know who the author was, so that's why we say the author of Hebrews. But the author of Hebrews writes this and actually specifically addresses when people start to drift away from their faith. Like what should we do in that moment? When they lose their faith, people lose their faith and drift away. In Hebrews chapter 10, verse 23, it says, let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful. I like to think of this anytime I hear the word swerving, I just immediately think of go-karts when I was in high school. And like, that's what you try to do. You like try to swerve into your friend and like make him crash. The author is saying, no. Let us hold unswervingly, like straight, hard, fast. That we're not over to the right or to the left. That we're on track. We're on point. We're moving in a direction that is most efficient. That is the best direction for us. Because the one who promised is faithful. You can trust God that he has a plan for you. He continues on in verse 24. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. This is interesting too, because in this moment when someone is actually, when they seem to be moving away from faith and dropping back away, he's saying, no, let's spur one another on. Like, let's kind of kick them a little bit. Let's encourage them strongly, not to just believe something, but to do something. These are active toward love and good deeds. This is an action step. If someone is moving away from faith, when someone starts to doubt, they need to do something actively in order to step back too. And as people that believe that God is true, that Jesus is who he said he was, if we believe that, then our conversation changes for people that we see starting to move back in faith. He continues on in verse 25. Not giving up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another. And this is huge. Because when you're alone, when you're isolated, you start to move away from what is good and beneficial and healthy. When you cut off relationship, you're not moving in a good direction. When it's good relationships, when it's people that care about you, when it's people that want to draw you closer to a loving Heavenly Father. Now, all of this shows that ultimately proximity matters. Proximity matters. In your life, in your relationships, often is the case we try to keep people away, like at arm's distance, because we've been hurt too much. We don't want to allow them into that space because we know how much pain that caused the last time we were in that space. We can control our narrative. We can control our life better if we keep people a little bit further away. But proximity matters because people lose faith when they lose contact with people of faith. We've seen this over and over, that the moments that people that we thought would, we had one picture in our mind as far as what this person was going to be like for the rest of their lives. And over time, they start to step back from some of those relationships, and that ends up allowing them to step back from faith as a whole. There's a moment when I was in Bible college, and this is kind of a weird, it was Christmas break. I'd been dating a girl that was not Amy. That was a bad choice. But so I was dating this girl, and I was in the biggest, if you know me, I'm pretty optimistic and pretty happy-go-lucky kind of guy. And I was just in a funk. I was grouchy. I wasn't happy. Nothing. The joy of Christmas didn't even shock me out of it. And I had to go back down to Southern California, and I was a security guard at the time on campus. So I had to go back to work early. And I went down there, and there's just a day I thought, I need to figure some stuff out. So I had a 4Runner at the time, and I loaded it up with my guitar, a Bible, and a journal. I was like, okay, I'm going to go up. I'm going to spend some hours out in the mountains, the San Gabriel Mountains up by school, and I'm just going to be alone and try to figure this out. I got to figure something out. Something is off. And I pull into, I get up there. There's nobody else around. It's all quiet. It's exactly what I wanted. And I pull over to the side of the road, and I'm sitting on the back tailgate, and this guy pulls in. I'm just starting to pray. I'm like, God, just help me. Just show me. Just talk to me somehow. And this guy pulls in behind me, and he asks me what I'm doing. I thought, well, it's kind of awkward, but so I'm a Bible college student. I believe in God, and I'm just kind of going through a season. I want to spend some time, try to get some insight, maybe some direction for my life right now. And he goes, oh, and he starts to talk about his story. And he actually helped plant a church in Oregon. And I knew of the church. It was a bigger church in our denomination, actually. And I thought, this is, in the back of my mind, he's telling me a story, and this smile is just not leaving my face, because I thought, this is exactly what I needed to hear. This man is going to tell me, the encouraging statement. He's going to tell me the exact thing that I need to know for my next step. And then everything changed in a moment. Because then he told me about his exit from faith, that he helped plant this church, and then he stepped away from all of it altogether as a whole. And he tried to give me a book to read, and I tried to give him a book to read, and then we said goodbye. And I was so angry for two reasons. One, that guy, the conversation took all of my time that I had. I had to go back to school. I was like, no, I didn't even do anything now. And as I'm driving back, I was starting to get angry at God. I was like, God, here I was praying. I was trying to do the thing that I needed to do. I was trying to set time aside that I can connect with you, that I can get some direction for my life. And then you send me him, or even just allow him to come. Like, what was that all about? And I remember so clearly in that moment, I understood. And it's simply that when you don't surround people, when you don't surround yourself with people that are moving in the same direction as you, anyone is susceptible to stepping back from faith. Every single one of us have that potential in us if we step back from the people that actually help us and encourage us move forward. And that's what I learned. That's what I learned. And you know what? Since then, I've watched over and over, and sometimes to a great degree of pain, as people have done exactly that. And I think, if you just would have put, let your guard down a little bit more. If you just would have let them speak into your life a little bit more. If you would have heard with authenticity rather than with earplugs in. Like if you just would have allowed them to speak truth to you. Because this providential relationship, right? Providential relationships, that when we see God's faithfulness in someone else's life, it's easier to trust him with ours. Over and over. We can be having a bad day, and you have a conversation with someone that's like, God showed up in my life. That encourages us. It allows us to be like, okay, I've had a bad day, but they're having a great day. I've had a bad day, but I know there's a good day coming. I don't know when it's going to be, but there's something coming because God is a good God that has good things for me. And yes, we're promised that life is going to be hard. Yes, we know that there's going to be storms that we're going to have to face and walk through. But we also know that there are good things that God has in store for us. And so many of those are connected to relationships. Providential relationships, staying connected to community of faith grows our faith. And this is why we're so intentional. I can't create a providential relationship for any of you. This is not something that you can just plan and be like, okay, you guys are going to go get coffee, and then that's going to be the relationship that's going to change your life. I can't plan that. I wish I could. I'd make church growth way better, but I can't. But we can provide opportunities for you. And one of those opportunities is just simply showing up to church, surrounding yourself with people that are moving in the same direction. Some of those opportunities are actually getting involved in one of our teams and serving with people, elbow to elbow, with people that love our community, that love God, that moves you. Some of those things are joining in a small group when we have the opportunity to join a small group. Join a small group. Place yourself in a circle instead of just a row where you do life with someone. That in that moment, and this is the hard part, right? I hear this over and over. I'm good. I don't need to join a small group. Like I read my Bible all the time. I go to church all the time. I'm good. My faith is strong. I'm good. And I think, yeah, you might be. But you're also saying no to the impact that you can have on other people. Because your faith is not your own. It's not just about you. It's about people that aren't even here yet. In addition to that, the moments in life, the moments that we have this storm, the moments that we need people to hold us steady, the moments that we need that in life, we can't go and build a relationship in that moment that's going to do that for us. You either have those people in your life already or you don't. Either you're going to be tossed by the waves in the ocean or you're going to be held fast because the people you have in your life are there with you and fighting with you already. So when I encourage people to join a small group, when I encourage people to get involved, to take that next step, to build the relationships, it's not just about your today. It's about your tomorrow. When I encourage people, bring your kids to church because this is going to lodge the anchor of faith in their life. This is not just like a happy suggestion. This is, no, there's going to be storms in your kids' lives. And you hope that the moment that those storms show up, that they have people surrounding them that love them, that care about them, that are saying the same things that you do as a parent, but from a different angle. That's what you hope. Bring your friends, bring your neighbors' kids to church too. There's Don't kidnap them. But like, there's candy. No, there probably is. It's worth it. It is worth it, honestly. Whatever you can do to get a child, to get a kid, to get a family, to get a neighbor to show up, it will be worth it. There's something that hangs in the balance. And we talk about this often. Caleb talked about this earlier. But it's very, very simple. We have Easter coming up, and this is a great opportunity to come and sit with me. It's as simple as that. Hey, my church is having this Easter service. It's going to be great, a lot of fun. Band's going to be amazing. Just come and sit with me. Just come and sit with me. Or in this one, if you're serving at church, which a lot of you do serve, and we're so grateful for you, you can invite someone to come serve with you. If you're in Wamba Lane and watching some babies, and you know that a neighbor's in there that's like, they've been missing, they have their grandparent, they're missing their grandbabies. If they want to hold a baby, there's a few steps that we have. We don't just invite strangers to come hold babies, but people would be willing to do that. And just getting them in the door and around other folks is beneficial, it's healthy, and it's helpful. Shared experiences like that create stronger relationships. And in those moments, those stronger relationships allow you to have more leverage, a bigger platform in their life to be able to say, hey, I know your history with church. I know how much, someone's beat you up about church before. I understand that, but would you just trust me just for a week? Will you just come and check it out with me? Just come and sit with me. And in those shared experiences, you can leverage that a little bit more to invite someone to come. And that's true. This is just true. You can invite someone to experience something that's outside of their comfort zone if you have shared experience. If it's a stranger, you can still invite them, but you don't have as much leverage. This is true whether it's asking them to try out sushi or show up to church. Both are really good. One just has eternal ramifications. A single invitation could absolutely position you as a catalyst in someone's faith story. And this, I think, we don't get. We don't process this enough. But just a single invitation can change someone's life forever. And forever, they will tell their story with you in it. And there's a chance that forever, you actually shift your story to include them in it as well. There's something that we, for years and years and years, is my favorite one-liner. Your friends determine the direction and quality of your life. And that is true whether you are 14, it's true whether you are 44, or whether you are 84. It is true throughout life. The people that you surround yourself with in life will determine the direction that you're moving in and the quality, how good of an experience of life that you have. So don't go around choosing people like half-heartedly just because they said okay to hang out with you one night. Be intentional about the people that you invite into your life. And not only that, seek people out that you know are going to be helpful for you. And down the road, like I said, down the road, you're going to be part of their story. And they'll probably be part of your story as well. God uses community, and proximity matters. That's what we know. God's faithfulness it's unchanging. It's always available, and it's always true that He is trustworthy. So as difficult as it might be to invite someone to come to church with you, or just to spend time with them, I know sometimes that's a big thing too. You're like, man, it takes energy. It takes something to spend some time with some certain people. And yet it's still worth it. It is still worth it. And when we start to see God work in their life, we trust that God's at work in our life as well. As always, we're going to leave off with a few questions for you to continue this conversation, because we don't want you to just hear something, but we want you to continue this on out outside of this building as well, because otherwise you just listen to my voice, and trust me, it's not that good unless there's action behind it. For discussion, question number 1, can you think of someone God providentially brought into your life at just the right time? Initially, did you resist their input? Why? Question number 2. You may be hesitant to acknowledge it, but have you played that role, that providential relationship role for somebody else in someone else's life? What has that done to your faith? When you see the impact that you've made, has that encouraged you or discouraged you? Probably encouraged. Question number 3. Are the people whose stories shaped and strengthened your faith aware of the role that they played in your life? Have you told them? Would you? I feel like a repeated record over here. Like, we just want to be a community that communicates, especially the important, valuable things. If you, as far as all these questions, if you forget what they are or you want to go back and revisit them, you can go to our website, look at the messages, and off to the right is a groups button that you can click, and that has all the questions on there as well. But like I said before, like Caleb said before, Easter, really easy invite. Everybody's already thinking like, oh, the Easter Bunny. There's something about church too, isn't there? Yeah. So just ask them, hey, come sit with me. We have a great service planned for you. It'll be a lot of fun. And come back on Easter. So that is April 17th. And if you don't want to wait till Easter, next week is just as good. Let me pray, and we will get out of here. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for everything that you've done for us. God, you are so good. And some of the greatest blessings that you've given us are the people that you've surrounded us with. And maybe it's just been for a short season, or maybe it's been for a long period and a long portion of our life. But you have plans to utilize people to draw us to you. And on the flip side of that, you have plans for us to draw people to you. And I pray that we would take that step of faith and that step of courage in order to do the thing that we know we need to do. That we would pick up the phone and call the person that needs someone back in their life again. That we would be willing to have the conversation. We'd be willing to invite someone to just come and sit with us. Because ultimately, there's something that hangs in the balance. We believe that life change hangs in the balance. We believe that health hangs in the balance. We believe that a relationship with you hangs in the balance. And you're entrusting us with this opportunity. And I pray we would not let it go. God, we trust you, we love you, and we thank you that you first loved us. In your name I pray. Amen. Well, thanks for being here with us. We'll see you next week for part 5.